Reggae music is among the biggest genres of music on earth, with hundreds of millions of fans immersed heavily in the sounds of roots, dancehall, and lovers rock, as well as the other infectious subgenres of the art form. Though dancehall has in recent years overtaken reggae as a dominant sound in Jamaica and quite a number of other places, reggae has over the last 5 decades remained arguably the #1 sound in Africa. Not only does reggae possess several elements of the motherland's culture, like the Nyabingi drums and spiritual themes, but the birth of reggae was sparked by the visit to Jamaica of one of Africa's most famous sons, Emperor Haile Selassie, in April of 1966. The incredible bond between Jamaica and Africa has its roots in the teachings of Marcus Garvey, a Jamaican national hero whose philosophies lay the foundations to create the Rastafarian movement. This, in turn, became the unofficial custodian of Africa's heritage in Jamaica. The Rastafarian ideology infiltrated Jamaican music as it was evolving from rocksteady in the late 1960s. Rastafarian influence infused heavy spiritual, social, and politically charged themes, and when all wrapped up together, the new sound became what is known as reggae. Though Jamaican music was always popular in Africa since the days of ska, it was reggae in the 1970s, loaded with inspiring messages of African unity, resistance to oppressors, denouncement of neo-colonialism and corruption that would truly resonate with Africans. Reggae would form the soundtrack for revolution, social change and hope amidst the insurmountable odds that the average African has dealt with for decades. Let's take a look at Africa's unbreakable romance with reggae. As I said earlier, Caribbean music had been very popular in Africa by the middle of the 20th century, with calypso making huge waves by the 1950s and ska becoming really big by the early 1960s. In the early ska era, Jamaican singer Millie Small would go on a groundbreaking tour of several countries in Africa, where her song, My Boy Lollipop, became the #1 song in several countries during that time. The themes and subjects of most of these songs were light-hearted and optimistic, reflecting the prevailing mood on the continent during the period of decolonization, as many countries were gaining independence from European colonial rulers. The hope for Africa entering into a new age of prosperity was really high. However, in 1964, a huge wave of oppression in South Africa, culminating in the imprisonment of Nelson Mandela, signaled that all wasn't well on the continent as it pertained to freedom. The oppression of people of color by the apartheid regime sent shockwaves through Africa. As the 1960s rolled into the 1970s, there was a general sense of demoralization as many African countries were hit by economic crises, corruption, civil war, and military coups. Optimism had turned into despair. As is often the case, the arts reflect the mood in society. A massive cultural shift in Jamaica would build a new sound that would resonate with the African experience in an unprecedented way. In April 1966, Emperor Haile Selassie made his legendary visit to Jamaica. That visit legitimized the Rastafarian communities and led to thousands of Jamaican artists converting to that faith. Singers like Bob Marley, the Wailers, Toots and the Maytals and others were among the first wave of Rastafarian musicians. The themes of their music became dominated by subjects of spirituality and social consciousness, with Africa celebrated as the promised land and the home of all Africans in the diaspora. The lyrics of these Rastafarian singers were confrontational, calling out the existential threats Africans were facing like no genre of music had done before. Whether it was police brutality, unemployment, or corruption, there was always an artist or a song that spoke to the African audience. At the time, the core constituency of reggae fans included the unemployed, radical college students, teachers, and herb smokers. Reggae became the voice that expressed the frustrations of people on a faltering continent being destroyed by Babylon, which came in the form of oppressive governments. South Africa would be the rallying point and spark for reggae's massive popularity across the continent. In 1976, the world was appalled by the Soweto uprising, which inspired the first known anti-apartheid song by Jamaican band The Mighty Travellers, titled South Africa, released the same year. Bob Marley's album Rastaman Vibration, with tracks like War and Crazy Baldhead, provided heavy symbolism about the situation in the motherland. Meanwhile, Peter Tosh's militant masterpiece Equal Rights included songs like Equal Rights, Apartheid, and Down Presser Man, which directly challenged the oppressors in Africa and won millions of new fans. By 1978, a homegrown reggae movement was birthed when Nigerian singer Sunny Okasun released his album Fire in Soweto. It was a smash hit and resounding success across Africa, which was eventually banned in South Africa. In 1980, Jimmy Cliff made a groundbreaking visit to South Africa, inspiring a young singer named Lucky Dube to become a reggae artist. Reggae wasn't just protest music for South Africa, it became the soundtrack for guerrilla fighters during Zimbabwe's War of Independence. The rebel army, Zanla PF, reportedly played Bob Marley's music in their bush camps to maintain morale during the war. By the 1980s, reggae had become the most popular genre in Africa and a leading cultural force against apartheid and oppression. As the golden era of reggae ended in Jamaica, it was only just beginning in Africa. The continent produced its own legends, including Lucky Dube, Alpha Blondy, Majek Fashek, Tiken Jah Fakoly, Rocky Dawuni, and Ras Kimono. Even when Nelson Mandela was freed in 1990, reggae's role as the music of the underdog grew stronger. By the 1990s, with no more colonial rulers to fight, reggae continued to convey insightful commentary about governments, while using the metaphor of Babylon to criticize corrupt leadership. Though dancehall gained immense popularity globally, especially in the West and Africa, when reggae is mentioned in Africa, people think of the classic sounds with messages of resistance, hope, and the promise that Jah will bring justice. Today, Kenya is perhaps the strongest reggae fan base in Africa, and many reggae superstars consider it a second home. Burning Spear was even scheduled to play a concert there in June, which was cancelled due to protests over government taxation. Videos from the protest showed young people marching and singing to Bob Marley's Africa Unite. Reggae remains the people's music, conceived to inspire, unite, and comfort the oppressed. Over the past 5 decades, it has done exactly what it was created to do in Africa: serve as a rallying sound for millions of people, holding on to the message reggae music gave to Africa, to fight for freedom and unite as one. If you like reggae music and like this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.